Here we are with Saim Sadiq from Karachi, the filmmaker who directed Darling. Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you? How is everybody who's watching it later on?
I hope well enough to watch the films. I want to say first that I like Darling very, very much.
Thank you.
When we watched it, it is hard for me to understand that you did it as a student because it is so rich and mature and how would I put it, crafted very well. Your camera work, the directing, the setup, it's just so rich. I very much enjoyed it. Could you tell us?
Thank you very much.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. Could you tell us about the evolution of the film? How, and the script, how did it become what it is?
So it's been a very long process actually. So the film was shot in 2018, so I have to jog my memory a little bit. It started because I wrote a feature film screenplay, which was essentially dealing with a similar sort of world and similar themes, but a very different story. But it did involve sort of a romance at the center of it with the trans girl and a seemingly heterosexual boy, and also involved this world of the dance theater that you see. But those things kind of played a different part in the feature. So I wanted to do, as my thesis film at Columbia, sort of a proof of concept of the feature film in a way, that I wanted to not do the same story of the feature in a short format, but I just wanted to take certain themes in the world and somewhere the feel, that I wanted to explore in the feature film, in the short film as well. So that's where the idea started, but initially it was like a year before the shoot, we had to apply for these grants to be able to, through school, to get some funding to even to start to make the film. And so at that time, the script that I wrote to apply for that grant was very different. It was about the character of the dancer, the Shabbo dancer, the female dancer, basically. So it was centered around this woman dancer who's, it was a mix of these two dancers at the theater who are fighting with each other. There's a scene in the film. So it was kind of a mix, one character, a mix of both, There was a goat involved, but it was a very different, there was nothing queer about it in an obvious way also. And, but from then on, I think when I came to Pakistan 6 months before the shoot to start actually researching, going to the theater myself as an audience and, then getting permission to sit backstage with sometimes the tea guy, sometimes the assistant, sometimes if I was lucky, the dancers, and to be able to talk to them to get some research for the script, I kind of started still very interested in the world, but I started thinking of like another story and something even closer to the script. So then a trans girl's character and the boy's character kind of came into the picture for the script. And that was, I think, 4 or 5 months before the shoot. And then the process of auditioning the trans girls was also because there's no trans actresses here. Even if many of them are very talented and want to do it, there's, they haven't really had that kind of exposure in mainstream or even in alternate cinema at all so far, unfortunately, at least until at that time in 2018. So we started, we did a liaison with this NGO, which was an NGO for trans girls. And just to start talking to these girls, and it was a very like a friendly audition. So we didn't give them a script because I didn't have a script anymore because I threw the one that I had before out. And I just used to give them a scenario and, we used to act it out and I used to act with them, while holding the phone. So, or sometimes my AD would be holding the phone or something like that. And so the idea was to then also sit with them, talk to them and sort of become friendly with them and take their notes onto, just general, anything that they would want to share about their life that would kind of inform me going into the project, into writing the script. And so that process also became very, very helpful eventually, I think, in sort of shaping the characters, but also the politics of the film, what the film was trying to say, or what the film was sort of backing off from saying in a way, I think is kind of as important and what it's trying to say. You know, because when there's a film about a trans person, or especially in a world like a Muslim world like Pakistan, there's a lot of cliche of expectations that come with it, of, you know, it's going to be a story of their rights, and, you know, a sad film, and, you know, like a very NGO kind of a film, which I absolutely had no interest in making. Um, so I think those kind of little experiences of actually going to the theater and also immersing myself in the world of these trans girls, befriending them, they informed a lot my writing of the script. And the shoot was a breeze. It was thankfully a very easy process. Funnily enough, we shot for 5 days. We actually were supposed to shoot for 6 days. We ended up shooting in 5 only. So I think from at least from the ideation process till the shoot, the scripting was the tough part.
Change some things from the script in the process of shooting, as it often happens. I think it's better as it is in the movie. I did want to ask you about the situation of trans people in Pakistan in general. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's frankly speaking, it's a mix of what the stereotype expectation might be, which is, of course, that, you know, there is a lot of prejudice involved, for sure, that, you know, they are often mostly relegated to begging or sex work, and you know, stuff like that. So that stereotype happens to be true to a certain extent, but a very pleasant other side of the coin also exists, thankfully, which is that Pakistan is, because they've been a part of our culture for a very long time. And they used to be in the Mughal era, in the, just historically speaking, before the British colonized the subcontinent. They were a very important part of not just the harems of the rulers, but they were also an extremely important part of actually teaching royal mannerisms to the princes and princesses. You know, so they were revered in that sense. They were associated with poetry and stuff. So when the colonization happened, it kind of got ruined, because suddenly they were, like, you know, looked at these unwanted minorities. But of course, the syntax of them being a very important part of our culture remains. So they're a very visible part. You know, you go out and you wouldn't turn twice to look at a trans person, because they're just so there. You know, we know that they're there. You know, when a baby is born, in any house, you know, if you specifically if you live in like these older neighborhoods, a big group of trans people would come to your house and to bless the baby, and you're supposed to welcome them, and you're supposed to give them some money, you know, because it's supposed to be good luck if they, you know, that's again a cultural notion that exists. Of course, it's another debatable thing. But and in 2018, the Pakistan Supreme Court and then the Parliament passed a law which allows for self-identification, and then identified them as a third gender on their ID cards, which in a weird way puts Pakistan as one of, like, I think only 12 or 13 countries that has a third gender acknowledged in their identity cards or in the documents, you know. So that has led to definitely a positive change. They're far more vocal now. They're far more a part of, you know, in charge of their own political process. And you see them slowly but surely, you know, taking their fair share of position everywhere, you know, whether it's education, whether it's the police force, whether it's trying to get into the parliament, running for elections. So you see all those kinds of very positive changes that are happening. The violence against them still exists, unfortunately, but there is this other side, which is very surprising, and hopefully will be the one that takes them forward.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work with Alina Khan, who plays Alina Darling? She is wonderful.
She's a wonderful, wonderful girl.
So she was auditioned, right? You found the audition? Yeah.
Yeah, so when we were auditioning like 2 or 3 months before the shoot, we found she came to audition, but she was very sleepy. she was just not sleepy. So she was just somehow, she didn't understand, because, you know, like, there are very few films that get made here, and there is just no concept for a trans girl suddenly, you know, being told through an NGO that, oh, these people have come here to audition you. They don't get, in the beginning, they're like, oh, you know, they think of it as something might be shady about it, you know, or, you know, I don't know, they just don't take it seriously because they've never heard of it. Like, why do they want to audition us, you know? So and she's never done a photo shoot. So she came in and she was not very good in the first audition, and so I let her go. But my assistant director she had known her in a personal capacity before, and she'd seen her dance and perform. So she kept reminding me of her, and I was like, no, I don't think she can do it. She was not interested. We went for another, eventually after auditioning a lot of trans girls, we couldn't find many, but we went for one option, but then it just didn't seem right for certain reasons. And 5 days before the shoot, we knew that Alina is a very good dancer. So we've taken the actor that we had cast already to her house to just as a, please look at her dancing, just to train the one that we had. And I saw Alina perform there because we went to her own house. So, it was her apartment and she was more comfortable, and she smoked a little joint, and, she just got really comfortable and started chatting. And, and then for me as a director, I was like, oh, this is a whole other person. She was a real firecracker. She was just really funny, smart. And then 5 days before the shoot, I had to switch the casting because, of course, sorry, I forgot to mention a very important point, which was that when we auditioned previously, all the trans girls, none of them seemed to be, one or two that we liked, they didn't get permission from home to be able to do it, So eventually I was like, okay, let's open it up. Let's open it up to women or men who want to do it, and let's see what happens, because it's supposed to be a young person. So the age bracket I was very sure about, because I couldn't have an older trans person, because I wanted a certain amount of youthful ambition and naivete that comes with it, So we started auditioning girls and boys, and then we had selected a boy to play Alina's part. And I was like, okay, let's, make sure that, he sort of trains himself and sort of makes himself a part of the trans community, to learn from them in a certain way, their mannerisms and stuff. And it was obviously not appropriate casting, and I was aware of that. So that was also bugging me, obviously. But I kind of got the lesson. I learned the lesson when I went to Alina's house later, and I was like, what she is doing, the kind of lingo that she's bringing to the table, the kind of mannerisms, the kind of body language, no acting can teach you that. It's just something so inherent to her. And so my lesson in appropriate casting was actually not based off of looking politically correct in a way, that, oh, we can't cast boys or girls anymore in trans characters because we'll get backlash. I think we can't cast them because they can't do it anymore. Like that, if a trans person plays a trans person, they will give you that much benefit of authenticity, and which happened. So a lot of the lines came from Alina's personal experiences. I changed. There's a scene on the rooftop when she's talking to Shani, and Shani's pacing back and forth. A lot of that dialogue comes from Alina's own experiences, so I let her do it. So she wrote those dialogues technically for me, in a way. So it was a very beneficial process eventually. And of course, I mean, the dance part became so much easier with her because she was just a natural. So she learned the choreography in 2 days and did it on those steps, and it was amazing.
She's so good that
she's really fun.
Suppose that you found her first and then wrote a script around her, because she's so herself in it.
Like, yeah, I did change it for her. I sort of adapted a lot of things for her.
It works very well. What was the reception of the film in Pakistan and then elsewhere? You did well in Malaysia, right?
We won at Venice, then we went to TIFF in South by Southwest and a bunch of other festivals. It was great, but my excitement of showing the film was obviously I wanted to show it in Pakistan. I think somewhere I felt like a Pakistani audience would be able to sort of understand certain things about it in a way that like an international audience can't, just because of, context. And we had a bunch of screenings, I think about 12 to 13 screenings in different cities and at different times. It was great. The reception was really, really heartening. I think a bunch of people, the most heartening thing was there was a lot of queer people who used to come to. So the first couple of screenings were all filled with like, obviously, a queer majority in the audience, which I had never seen in my life. I never sat in a theater and been like, more than 50% of these people are either trans people, lesbians, gays, and, like all sorts of like a wide spectrum. And it was just so heartening to see. I'm like, oh, there's a big audience. And the straight people are the minority here in the audience. That was really refreshing. And it's been great because till date, I get like 1 or 2 messages every day on my Instagram or whatever, just people kind of either inquiring about Darling or, so I think more than the film, just the idea of the queer community finding itself getting represented on screen somewhere. I think that for them, even the film was not good at all, or they didn't like the film, I think it wouldn't even matter to them. Just the idea that, we got represented somewhere in a local context as a queer community, that we exist, so that I think was really heartening to see, and perhaps the most exciting part for most people.
It is not just representation, but what is common in representation of trans people in American cinema and across the board is pathologizing them, right? The stereotypes that you mentioned, people who are tormented by being trans. And what is great about Alina, the role, and the actress, evidently, is that there's so much joy in her being as she is, right? And that's expressed in dance. When she auditions or this in the stands, in the bleachers, they feel joyous occasion. She is comfortable with who she is. There's no pathology there at all. And that is very refreshing in any cinema, in any cinematic situation, rather. I really, really like that. Did she see the movie? I mean, obviously she did, but how did she react?
Yeah, she's seen it a bunch of times. The first time she saw it, I sent her a link because I was still finalizing the edit and stuff. So I sent her a final link before we were supposed to go to Venice. And she saw it and she's like, yeah, it's nice and stuff. And she didn't really give like a real reaction. And I was like, I don't understand why she's like, why didn't you give me like a proper reaction? I was so busy. I was traveling with Venice and tips. So I came back and then there was the first screening in Pakistan where she saw it in a theater. And then she couldn't believe it because I think she said, and then she told me later that I saw it on my phone and it wouldn't play properly. My internet was bad and stuff like that. So I was like, why didn't you tell me before? But she cried a lot. I think it was a very out of body experience for her because she, till date, if you ask her, she's like, this is my story, like this is exactly how I feel. And this is exactly what if I was asked, like, what would the story of your life you would want it to look like? I think this is what I would want it to look like. And the reception of the people and the love that she got, she was a girl who was, she had to leave her family and she's only all of 22 years old. She's been out of her family for like 4 or 5 years now. She's been, gone through all sorts of very, very, very troubling experiences. And then for her to, sit in a packed theater and watch people clap for her and admire her and ask her these questions in Q&A. So it was a really special thing for her, and she used to get every screening, she used to get really emotional. It was quite beautiful, yeah.
That is great. You were mentioning earlier that originally you had a feature film idea. Is this going to be expanded into a feature film?
Yes, it still is. So I actually ended up rewriting the feature after I shot and edited Gulab, because of course the process of after I shot and edited Darling, the feature film is called Gulab, because I think the process of making the short film kind of informed me so much more. Again, process of interacting with Alina, the process of, even though the character in the feature is very different from Alina, but still, there are certain things that you can, that help you just for an overall understanding of how she perceives herself to be. And so I rewrote the script. We're supposed to hopefully shoot next year, the feature film in the summer. So let's hope it's worth its while. Thank you.
I can't wait to see it. Well, thank you. It was a very enjoyable.
Thank you so much.
I will show this film to my students and I will let you know how they see it and how they react. I'm very excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alexander. I'm so sorry about the back and forth in the communication before.
It's okay.
I was a little pain.